Chair Moldenauer said, I had submitted some amended language for committee and public review. It's in the packet as it relates to the vehicle registration fee. I think what I'm hoping to do here is trying our best to be as specific as possible on definitions, accountability when it comes to this fee and reckless driving solutions. We're trying to balance residents' concerns on increased taxes and fees and proper public reviews, along with the public's desire to control reckless driving or criminal driving behavior as needed. So those are essentially my comments. The language is pretty self-explanatory as it's out there. So those are my comments. If there's either motion or second, I'll leave it up to the chairman.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to Alder Arnie. I want to just first ask the public if they have any questions or comments, and we'll come back to the committee on this. We'll check on Zoom if there are any questions or comments amongst the folks on Zoom. Please raise your hand. Not seeing any hands raised. We'll go to the public. Any public? Okay, I see 2 hands raised. I see my colleague, and then I see Mr. Pronounce your name for me. Sluka. Okay. All right, Andrew, go ahead.
All right, cool. Are we timing comments tonight?
Well, do I need to time?
I don't think so. I can be brief-ish, more so than normal. I'll try to. So I will briefly want to comment about the wheel tax, which is an unrealized gain in the budget. The wheel tax is a regressive tax that disproportionately impacts residents while allowing non-residents, who make up 73% of traffic violations, to contribute to nothing. Even more troubling is how this tax has been quietly buried in the budget instead of being proposed as a standalone measure, avoiding direct accountability and stifling policy creativity. The projected $400,000 wheel tax revenue is expected to fund traffic calming measures, which will mostly go, as we've seen in budget documents, to crack filling, per the city. Real traffic calming installations usually cost nearly the entire amount of the proposed revenue this evening, making this likely a failed policy before it's even passed. In my district, requests for traffic calming are consistently denied, and residents are assessed to cover the costs when approved. Wheel tax is lipstick on a pig, a short-sighted, ineffective policy that will squander taxpayer dollars unless we adopt a comprehensive approach. Meanwhile, Wauwatosa politicians still claim that $15 is a small price to pay to save lives. Still, the reality is that creating safer streets requires a holistic, coordinated strategy, not token fees. Moreover, my overnight parking permit proposal, which could have offered a sustainable funding alternative, is currently being held by the city administration without discussion this budget cycle. I think we can do better, and we should table this for further discussion. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Sluka.
So I just have a question though on other amendments. Should I only speak to just this vehicle?
This is the item.
Okay, cool. I just wanted, because there's other items that I'd like to discuss, but for the vehicle registration or vehicle registration fee, I believe the city should look for a more comprehensive and voluntary approach. Alder Mindel had spoken of the overnight parking. Another revenue stream that the city could utilize in this budget cycle would be funding a grant writer that could actually be shared amongst all city departments to write grants, find funds that could help police, fire, parks, all that. I'd like to see this fee, because it's already pretty much baked into the budget. I don't see this as being a standalone item and being approved. It's probably just going to be passed through the budget. But I agree with Alder Morgan that there should be better oversight on this instead of being put into a city fund. Specifically, I'd like to see this fund be overseen by the Transportation Affairs Committee and actually having real percentages of where it should be directed to. These percentages that I would like to see would be 50% spent directly on neighborhood resident requests for traffic calming measures, specifically the tier 1 and tier 2, that is a program of the city. 25% should be spent on supplementing the crossing guards budget. With the new school district or the elementary school borders, there's going to be some more crossings that we are not currently having crossing guards at. And I think 25% of this budget could help create more crossing guards to protect our kids, as well as increase in other areas where we currently aren't serving them. And then the final 25%, I would like to see used towards the police department to help fund enforcement, whether that's getting more police resources to monitor traffic in high reckless driving areas, or just to help them in general with this kind of policing and enforcement. Again, this would be a better way than to just paving roads. This would actually go towards the reckless driving. Thank you.
All right, Mayor, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, nobody's suppressing the overnight parking discussion. But I will say that at best, an overnight parking fee would bring in $20,000 to $30,000, and we would lose the $225,000 that Captain Gabrish mentioned earlier tonight. So we'd be going backwards financially and not have any money to address any of these issues that anybody is bringing up here tonight. So let's go forward.
All right, Alder first.
I appreciate this amendment from Alder Morgan. At first I had a lot of concerns about this tax. It's like it's starting out at $400 and some thousand, and where does it go? So I really appreciate the time constraints that's going to be added in. And I think one of the concerns I originally had with this is, and I say it every year, credit card fees is like, we're now up to like $250,000 in paying credit card fees, but then on the other hand, we're going to charge people for the roads. And I was too worried about it's just a cover for crack filling, but this is why I really like Alder Morgan's amendment, because it very much defines and puts in metrics for what is traffic calming and make sure that that is addressed. So thank you, Alder Morgan, for what you've done.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, we're going to come to the committee.
Oh, sure.
I just want to be clear that we will have to take up the amendment first. We will be voting on the amendment, then we will be discussing the actual vehicle registration fee amendment. Go ahead.
I just had a question touching on and when you're putting this together, see, any increases to the vehicle registration fee would only be approved every 5 years. Can you tell me a little bit more about your thinking with that and why 5 years?
Absolutely. I think, as I kind of mentioned, it's an effort to balance what I'm hearing, and I think others would hear in the community. We're dealing with all these fiscal constraints, and that's what we're trying to get at here, as well as, again, serious traffic calming, and I appreciate the comments from a colleague in the audience and the other resident. So I guess what I'm saying there with limiting it to a 5-year review, we're showing the residents that we're going to hold the line on, and I think 5 years for something like this, a $15 fee, which doesn't seem like much, but I think if you talk to people, it's substantial to a lot of people and residents and businesses, and so that's where I was looking at it. I mean, and I think that's a more than reasonable number to look at. You know, that it should come up every 5 years, and that's something, again, more than open to debate, obviously.
Right, and I misstated. I said we were going to talk about taking a vote on what he's proposing as an amendment.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
to be clear on that. All right, Alder Arnie, were you complete? Do you have any other questions?
Yes.
All right, Alder McClure.
So I'm not sure if I'm handling this with this, but I appreciate Alder Morgan's amendment to this. I think that makes a lot more sense than just to leave it open like that. However, I'd like to look at this a little bit differently and take it a little bit one step further. I'd like to see this vehicle registration fee removed from the budget and brought back as a separate item. While a $15 fee may seem insignificant, it is certainly not for families with multiple vehicles and at a time when our residents are facing significant increases in other areas. Again, the idea of nickel and diming our residents to death. I am not saying no, but I am saying this item should be handled separately instead of being rammed through as under the guise of the budget procedures. This is something that is being forced now on our residents, even though we know the majority of reckless driving is not occurring by Tosa residents, but is coming from outside our borders into our city. It is not fair to blame and charge our residents as a result of others. We need to take a deeper dive into this before enacting such measures to our residents. Therefore, I actually would move to remove this and address this additionally as a separate item through this committee, through the Common Council, but not in the budget process.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right.
Point of order, I believe that was a motion.
There's a motion, yeah.
So.
Yeah. So we need to have a second. That's
Second.
where I was going with this.
I'm not gonna second it.
Any second on that? Okay, the motion fails because there's no second. All right, so we're back to the initial proposal, which is Alder Morgan's change in language, which has been presented to us amongst the committee. Are there any other questions or comments? Alder Phillips?
Says Alder Morgan, as chair of the Transportation Committee, will you get those guidelines set by 2025 at the beginning of the budget year? So,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, thank you. And I guess, yeah, and also, I guess the other thing is also to Mr. Solka's comments. I would like to get to something that's specific. I'm just not quite sure that those numbers are something we can realistically put in there and be held accountable to. But the spirit of it, I would love to get to the spirit of that. 50% of traffic calming, 25% crossing guards, 25 police enforcement. That's the spirit of what I'm proposing here. That's all I
All
can
right,
say.
just one second. Alder, I'm sorry, John Regine.
Just a clarification and then just a statement from staff. Just to be clear, the registration fee, even though it's in Alder Morgan's amendment, it's being called something different. Just to be clear, that this fee will appear on your annual vehicle registration renewal. And so the city has no control over how that is depicted. We can certainly internally and with our own communication refer to it this way. I just want to be clear that everyone understands that the bill comes from the state and we don't have any control over that.
Yeah.
Secondly, from a staff perspective, if the intention is to limit an increase to the vehicle registration fee for any reason every 5 years, then we would not recommend that. We face enough state-imposed restrictions, so to impose another restriction on ourselves with so much uncertainty in the future, I think would be doing yourselves a disservice, although I understand the intention of why that is. If the intention is to say that there will be no increase of the vehicle registration fee for this purpose for 5 years, as staff, we can probably get comfortable with this. But the vehicle registration fee is one of the last revenue options available to the city. We tried to pursue the transportation utility and we were stymied by the Supreme Court. So I would just strongly encourage the council to consider not placing a restriction on your ability to use the vehicle registration fee for other purposes in the future. And then lastly, just to the comment about trying to slip something in. As we lay out to you in the beginning of the budget process, this is one of the most important documents and one of the more important processes that we undertake. We don't hide anything. We purposely included a significant amount of detail on the vehicle registration fee. It is within the prerogative of the city administrator and the mayor to include financial policy within the budget, and this certainly is a financial policy. Whether or not people agree or disagree with the policy, we're more than happy to hear that discussion and appreciate that discussion. But as a procedural issue, I don't see anything wrong with the vehicle registration fee being pursued via the budget.
I've got, to what Mr. D just said, and with due respect, the fact that Alder Morgan has put in a 5-year limit on increases, I think we should not be looking at, $15 this year, $20 next year, $25 the following. We have to set a standard and say that we're not going to keep increasing fees on people, at least for a duration of time. To the spirit of what Alder Morgan was saying, I do have some thoughts on, breaking this down and how we should spend it. I know we're going to look at some seal coating, so my thought would be 25% to improving the roads and use of seal coating, 25 to neighborhood requests for traffic calming measures, and that would include both the city portion and any special assessments. It's not fair to go into a neighborhood, put a traffic calming measure, and to charge your residents a special assessment on top of the fact that you're going to charge them this fee in the first place. To 25%, which I like to supplement crossing guards, our children are our future, and we need to make sure that we've got sufficient crossing guards to protect them in their travels to and from school. And 25% to traffic enforcement and community outreach. I agree that with Alder Morgan that there needs to be some, community outreach, education type situation. However, one reoccurring theme comes when it comes to talking to people about reckless driving. And what they want to see is stronger enforcement. The speed bumps and the bump outs and everything are fine, but what they really want is stronger enforcement. They want speed traps set up. They want police visibility as a way to deter behavior. Therefore, some of the funds really should go to the police department in their efforts to extra enforcement measures. Remember, again, a lot of this comes from outside coming into our city, and we're essentially penalizing our residents to do the traffic calming measures, which I agree we need. But I think part of what we need to do is look at some of our own statutes and look at the regulations behind the reckless driving and the enforcement of that, making them have, sharper teeth to them so that if, there's a citation, that the person doesn't get out of it, and that's a way of determining. Milwaukee thinks gone to impounding vehicles or doing other things like that that give more of a deterrent factor to people coming in and doing things in our city. So that's what I would say.
Okay, so, all right, Chief of Police.
It's because I'm president, obviously, you as a body have oversight on this. I mean, I've explained to Transportation Affairs our 40-40-20 strategy, which is quite comprehensive. It's infrastructure, 40%, 40% enforcement, and 20% education and information out to the public. Yes, enforcement's part of it, but infrastructure is also important. Just wanted to opine that it's part of a comprehensive plan that we as a city staff are working on as well. So, sorry, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Follow up on that. What he's really saying, we talk about the 3 E's: education, enforcement, and engineering. We have a very good department. Of course, we could always, do more, but the chief and Captain Gaber spent a lot of time tonight saying we aren't able to hire more police officers. And if we put a police officer on a corner, nobody's going to speed, right? Until they get a couple blocks away. But if we have a bump out, that's there 24/7, 365 days a year. That's where the engineering comes in. That's one of the E's. That's the 40% and the 40% and the 20%. What we heard from our community in the community survey that we just did was do something about reckless driving. So we are. And when we talked about a vehicle registration fee, we said only if we can dedicate it to those things that our neighbors and our residents are concerned about. So, yeah, great. I heard from a couple of people who said, well, why don't you just have cops everywhere? Well, we can't have cops everywhere. But we can have that bump out there 24 hours a day. So this is just part of it. The other thing is I've heard 2 people tonight say, well, it's everybody else who's driving recklessly, it's not Wauwatosa. Well, first of all, I disagree. I was at Wilson School today during pickup time, and a woman drove right through the stop sign at Kavanaugh and Portland. I see that almost every day when I go by them. But We can't tax the people of Milwaukee or West Dallas or Brookfield. We can only tax ourselves. We pay for our infrastructure. Maybe that's unfair, but it's the only way we can do it. So we can talk all day long about whether they're coming from Brookfield or West Dallas. We don't have any option of getting money from them. If we want traffic calming in Wauwatosa, we in Wauwatosa have to do something about traffic calming.
Well, I'm in agreement that we need to do something. I'm just,
No, but it's spurious to talk about the 73% because we can't tax those people.
I understand we can't tax them, and I understand that even with our, infrastructure and stuff, where it's only gonna be in certain locations, we're not gonna have it everywhere that, and I appreciate the balance, but time and time again, what I have heard from people is they're concerned, and no disrespect, Chief, they want stronger or more enforcement measures.
Don't we all?
And, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Right. By the way, we had our public comment already. We're at the committee level where we're discussing this. This proposal, as it was initially couched, came to us, and Alder Morgan, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but your revisions were run through our city administration is that a correct comment?
Yeah, city administration and public works.
Right. So where I'm going with this is, let's be mindful of the people who have I'm not saying alders don't have their finger on the pulse of some of these things, but the proposal or what's before us was crafted with the notion that this is what the experts are saying they feel meets to the mayor's comments. I wholeheartedly agree. If he wasn't going to make those comments, I was going to make those comments, which is Wauwatosa streets and these sorts of things fall under our purview. We can't go taxing the city of Milwaukee or West Dallas or what have you with regard to the notion of what's there 24/7, 365. I strongly would ask you to go down North Avenue and see some of the aberrant driving that is stifled by the bump outs that we've installed on North Avenue. Yep. It is meaningful. And I'm talking about people who have this idea that they're going to go in the bike lanes and go around you, and all of a sudden at 50 miles an hour on a street that has 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, it's very unsafe. I'm just echoing, let's be cognizant of, rather than alder micromanaging some of this, and I don't want to speak and sound disrespectful, but we are getting this from the people who have their finger on the pulse of this, which is our public works and our police department and our city administration. Okay, any other questions or comments? Alder Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little apprehensive about this amendment given this conversation because I don't want to put more constraints on the city as we're trying to program at this level now, talking about percentages. As I understood, this was to address obviously road maintenance, but also the sorts of projects like the bump outs that Alder Moldenhauer just pointed out, which are a huge success, and the feedback I'm hearing from my residents. And I'm only reiterating what's been said here, but that engineering, and we're seeing that in Milwaukee. I work on the corner of Walnut and King, and there's been extensive traffic calming measures put in there, which have been significant. I can tell you, when I cross the road to the coffee shop, it is significantly safer because of those, and the police can't be there every moment. Right. So I guess I just want to make sure that we're still working towards these actual sorts of projects that are there 24/7, which is, I understand, the importance of this wheel registration fee. So I don't know if anyone, Jim or John, can speak to that. I know it's from DPW is here. So
Jim, go ahead.
I guess two comments. One is, yes, I believe what Alder Morgan has put forward stays exactly in that lane. The problem that comes to my mind as you're describing that is that if you start spreading it out into sort of other things, you're defeating exactly the purpose for which it was set up. Yeah. Looking at the citizen survey as the baseline, it is reckless driving, road maintenance, and what's the third one I'm forgetting? Yeah,
Just two.
those two. And there isn't, as we heard in the meeting with Public Works, there isn't enough money in this pot to necessarily do those effectively. As soon as you start dispersing it into other realms, other activities, other functions, you're losing exactly the purpose that it was set out for.
All right. Alder, go ahead.
Sorry. So did I hear correctly from finance that if this had an initial 5-year cap and then after that could just
Point of clarification,
Yes.
is Alder first on the committee?
Alder first is an alder, as are you, and you can make a comment. That's, if you want to raise your hand, I'll recognize you. Alders can be recognized. Go ahead.
Sorry, John. Did I hear you correctly that if this had an initial 5-year cap, it would work for the purpose of the city, and then it could be reviewed as needed every year after that?
My recommendation, just from the financial perspective, is not to limit yourselves, not to limit the city to any restriction on increases. If you wanted to contemplate a restriction, I would limit it to not increasing the vehicle registration fee for the purposes of reckless driving. But even then, I think you're limiting yourself to, as Mr. Archambault just stated, we could spend all of that money on seal coating and still not have enough. So I understand the public's apprehension about a fee being put in and increasing. And if we had other revenue options, I'd be less concerned. But this is one of the last revenue options of any substance that we can turn to. So I just never like the Common Council to restrict themselves more than we're restricted by state statute.
Yeah, I guess where I get concerned is we kind of go based off of staff recommendations. So where do you kind of see this ultimately going to within 5 years? Or is it $15 going to be to 17? Is it $15 going to be to 35? I lived in California. I went from $350 registration to now the average is $650 a year to register a car. So like I do come with a little apprehension when we don't know where this caps out at.
And to be able to answer your question, we need to know what the state's going to do around funding municipalities.
Well, if nothing else changes.
If nothing else changes, I would say within the next 5 years, we probably would present a proposal for increasing the vehicle registration fee for either the capital budget or to fill an operating budget gap so that we don't have to reduce services elsewhere.
Okay, and kind of loose guess, like in 5 years, what that would be for a wheel tax?
I think I don't want to put a number out there because it will be wrong, but it'll stay out there forever. The other comment I would make is we also have concerns that I know the Common Council shares about the size of special assessments. One option that communities have pursued is implementing a vehicle registration fee in order to eliminate or reduce special assessments. So just another policy option that you would be taking off the table by putting this in place. And at the end of the day, you are the elected officials. Whether at staff, we cannot increase the vehicle registration fee. We can propose the vehicle registration fee be increased, but only you can approve it. And that's why I meant to say when I was talking about the budget process, the mayor and the city administrator have the prerogative to put items in. The council has the prerogative to take items out, as Alderman McCloof moved to remove the vehicle registration fee. So while I understand the intent, given the fiscal situation, I don't think it's in this community's best interest that you restrict yourselves.
Okay, I mean, just through going through this process, I do find it hard that it is baked into the, like not completely baked, but pretty close to baked, that we have, and then we're not getting a line item budget of like, okay, well here's where we could find $479,000. That it does make that part of the process difficult, that if there's a bridge at all to how this could be move forward and not be so tied.
And just to be clear, why I don't agree with the terminology baked in, if we had wanted to bake this in, what we would have done is we would have put it in as a revenue, and then we would have listed all the projects that it was meant to accomplish. That way, if you remove the revenue, you would be saying we are not doing this project, that project. I know people are looking for an itemized list of how we're going to spend those funds, but we intentionally didn't put it in because if you want to remove this fee, you can just remove it. The expenditure is in there as a lump sum within the roadway maintenance department. So you cause no harm to the budget by removing it. No employees get laid off. No projects go uncompleted. So it's not baked in the sense that you have to unravel a lot of things to remove it.
Thank you, Jeff, or Director Regini. I think that is actually like that flexible bridge I was kind of looking for, so I really appreciate that. I'm good. I did see that Alder Brandon was online and had her hand up about 15 minutes.
Okay, I appreciate you mentioning that. I did see my colleague here, Alder Foley, has his hand up.
Thank you.
And I'll recognize Alder Brandon.
Thank you. I applaud the city administration trying to take advantage of revenue tools that we may need to try to help out the city in its roadway maintenance and traffic mitigation issues. If this would be approved, I think we'd be the first suburban Milwaukee County municipality to adopt this fee. I don't think there's any other suburban Milwaukee County municipalities that have a vehicle registration fee.
They're not?
No, the city of Milwaukee does, but suburban communities.
Suburban municipalities don't. So I applaud the lead of this city, along, as Mr. Morgan noted, procurement policy of attempting to do something to help our citizens in the city. We can't put barriers at the entrances and exits to Wauwatosa. Whether it's 73% of people coming in are reckless drivers, to me, we have to be worried about how we treat our people in this city. And regardless of where they come from, this is part of an open society and an open government that we take care of what we do. So if we say that we want to address reckless driving and we want to address roadway maintenance, this may be enticing to businesses, to residents to say, this might be the city where I go, as opposed to Milwaukee, as opposed to West Allis or Brookfield or something along those lines. I think that, and I also think, we've talked a lot about reckless driving, but we all know outside of main arterial roads, the roads in our neighborhoods are not in good shape. They're in not good shape at all. And if we can take any amount of money to be able to help out our residential streets, I think is applaudable. I also think that by using the money from this fee, it may free up some money. I don't know how the budget process will work for next year, but maybe we can allocate some money to crossing guards. Rather than having one crossing guard here at the intersection with all the middle school students, maybe we have two. But regardless, I do have a concern, as Alder Phillips raised, that we get into the world, and Alder Moldenhauer I think did too, about micromanaging the process. The other part of this is that I do think this is the appropriate way to handle this process in the budget process. The city of Milwaukee does it every single budget cycle, it seems like, from what I read in the paper. They're proposing a street lighting maintenance fee. They're proposing a waste removal fee, all part of their budget. So I think it would be appropriate in this circumstances to do it that way. I also think if we do see this fee being proposed in the middle of July, it may provide other issues with regard to budgeting that I'm not aware of, as how the finances are reported internally to the state or whoever. So I think in a budget process, this seems like the appropriate way to have a debate about it. Those are just a few of my thoughts.
Thank you. All right, and Alder Brandon, I want to, you can speak and unmute. I believe you're muted, and I apologize that I didn't see your hand raised earlier.
I think she left.
Oh, she's on.
She said she had an emergency.
Oh, well, she has her hand raised yet. Oh, there. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. She's not available. All right. Alder-minded.
I'm gonna try to make a comment here for just 1 second. I just wanted to reiterate kind of the comments that were already made.
by the last couple of people, and just, really pigeonholing how we use these dollars. Just, I don't feel like it recognizes that our staff has different uses for these dollars in different budget years. So if we're looking at the next 5 years, putting specific percentages to that really kind of pigeonholes them into what they can do with those dollars when they have different needs and different requests. So I just really feel like it's important, going along with Alder Morgan's amendment, to have that going through the budget process, through the capital budget, and through the Transportation Affairs Committee, who's used to seeing these types of requests. As we know, the budget, it doesn't exist to do everything we want to do for traffic calming, but I think it's our engineering department and our police department who need to be determining how those dollars are used, not setting those specific percentages at this point. So appreciate the time to comment. I have to drop off for this soon. So thanks.
Yeah, sorry I didn't see your hand raised earlier. All right, I'll remind them.
Right, I'm curious. So in 2023, I believe the state legislature increased reckless driving citations by $535. Does the city get any of that?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Because I would be curious, because if we're talking about stronger enforcement, if the state gave us that avenue.
What typically happens with the citation is a portion remains with the municipality, a portion goes to the county, and a portion goes to the state. So I don't know, maybe the municipal judge can speak to it.
May I speak?
Yeah.
That was the question I wanted to ask, is that it was raised in 2023, and it was a specific new statute that was passed, a driver improvement surcharge, I believe. And it's specifically for safe roads, and so that's why I was wondering if it's a separate 535 that's now tacked on to the already, and they also bumped up the citations themselves. So I didn't know if that is different than the way the normal citations work in terms of if we're getting any of that back.
Okay. All right. Any other?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, a couple other things. So usually, we're hearing about micromanaging and whatever, but we are the legislative body who's supposed to provide the check to the executive. That's our job. And my concern is addressing the root cause, which we've heard the survey, which is reckless driving. How much do you think a traffic calming installation costs? Give or take $300,000 to $400,000 per installation. Speed
I'm sorry,
bumps.
that's not correct.
Well, okay, correct me, please.
The 92nd Street project cost us under $20,000 because we did it with in-house staff. 90th, excuse me.
Okay, but was that a full intersection with the traffic calming measures, not speed bumps?
It's bump outs. There's a picture in the budget. That's what we use
awesome.
to illustrate the vehicle registration.
Thank you for correcting. So then, hypothetically, we could be doing roughly 10, 15, 20 of these a year with this funds, which seems desirable to our constituents. And I've heard the language already of, well, let's improve road maintenance. Crack filling came up again. We need, if this is, we're looking at this. I and my constituents, I can confidently say, would want, if they're paying $15 for a tax, the direct benefit they see is a traffic calming installation available to them in their communities. Not we play this game of where some of it's going to road maintenance. I understand road maintenance is important, but I need to be able to go back to my constituents and say, $15 of your money went and paid for that traffic calming installation on that corner. And as we've heard tonight, that does help reduce traffic. And so just not putting any guidelines on this fund. I lived in Chicago, piggybacking off of California. The fee increases and all that, it gets wild down the road. And I need to make sure that representing my constituents, that we have some sort of concrete, agreement with them, that when we're charging them $15 within this economy and with this inflation, that it's going for a good cause in their community. Thank you.
All right, Mayor.
I agree that we should have this discussion. I don't think it's productive to do it now because we'll never get the budget done. My recommendation is that you pass the $15 fee and continue the discussion. Beyond that, I addressed the Rotary Club last week. And I was asked, well, it's $15 today, what's to keep it from going to 100? I said, good question. Nobody wants it to go to 100. He said, so what's the backstop? And I said, the backstop is 16 members of the Common Council. You guys represent the people in this city. And it's up to you, and me, but mostly you, because you're the ones who get the vote 99.9% of the time, to make sure that the increases, if any, are not excessive. I mean, that's your job. That's our job collectively as city elected officials, to do what we can to balance the needs of our constituents against the need to raise the money to pay for those services. That's what's called the budget process. That's what we're doing. But I don't want it to go to $100. Certainly don't want it to go to $600. But it's up to all of us to make sure that we continue to show restraint. Nothing stops anybody from imposing a fee, except for 16 members of the Common Council.
All right. Okay, Alder Arnie, then Alder Morgan.
So, I first want to say I really do appreciate the work in the amendment, and I am in favor of it. I think in terms of integrity, like what is our relationship with the people that we're representing, the 5-year moratorium on increases in this particular fee. I understand why that's there, and I don't really know what the magic number is. And I was just checking, this really does hit the top 2 priorities off of the Wauwatosa city survey. People want safe streets, and they want streets that are maintained. I think the way that it's worded right now is good. I'm glad that the way you put it, like this is coming through the transportation committee. It's very well looked at. I think the problem that we get into when we start talking about percentages and things is that we're programming. This is a policy body, and the program details need to be responding to what we're actually seeing. And what can happen is when we start slicing and dicing like this, is we don't end up with quite enough in any one place, that it just gets, it doesn't actually end up meeting the need. So I think that in terms of policy, I like the way it's been. It's kind of, I don't want to get into like, is the number 2 years, is the number 5 years, something. I do feel, because I feel it. It's like what you said about, next year is it going to be this, or next year is it going to be that. I feel like in terms of the reality is, next year we could say, we're going to rescind the 5-year thing on this, and we're going to do something else. So I think the best we can do right now is say, yes, this is a fee. I guess what I got wrong is that we're not the only municipality in Wisconsin. There's like lots of other municipalities in Wisconsin that have fees, and they're just not in Milwaukee County.
If you may remember, when this was first broached, I asked city staff to get back to us, and they circulated the list. John,
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong, you had an intern put that list together, and since this was broached a number of years ago, it's gone up 100-fold, right?
Right.
So,
So that's what I was responding to. I just got the location. So I'm a yes, and I do appreciate it, because we are here to represent and do our best. We're not. People are very sensitive to all of the increases that we're asking for them to get, because it's on top of so many other utility increases and the inflation and all this kind of thing. But I think as responsible representative, this makes sense, and it's also half what it was, the last time it was brought up like 5 years ago too, so. I think we hear and respect that people don't like being feed. So, anyway,
All right.
that's where I am.
So I'm gonna go back to Alder Morgan, and then you wanna make a motion on that?
Yeah.
Formalize it.
And and thanks for,
I'm sorry, I meant to say, there's one other thing I also looked up. The state does not give anybody any of that $435 money. They keep it and they use it for, things that they do with it. So, no, it doesn't come to us. It's not a surprise.
Go ahead, Alder Morgan.
Okay.
Are you done, Alder?
I am.
Okay, all right.
I know.
Thanks for all that excellent input. And before, the other thing I forgot before is I want to thank the police department and Judge LaFave for some very helpful input in kind of researching this and looking at the numbers and the citations and all that. So I'll just, at this point, move approval.
Okay, so we have a motion to, that you put forward for your amended
Right.
language in there. Do we have a second, Alder, Arnie? You want a second then?
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay, so I want to just be clear on that. That's Morgan with a second by Arnie. All right. Any other questions or comments amongst the committee on this item? All right, and remember, we're voting on the amendment. All right, so let's take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. That passes 8-0. So thank you, Alder Morgan, for that. All right. So now before us are other amendments proposed at the meeting. John, did you have any other amendments that were submitted?